Behold, the most coveted thing in all the world! A Nintendo M82 demo unit. Okay, so the deal with this thing is it would be in a store and allow you to select one of 12 Nintendo games played off actual cartridges that you want to try out. Then on the back we have audio video jack, standard RCA, RF, probably won't use that. A setting for how long the kids get to play. Let's do 30 seconds, let's be really mean. And then looks like it has an internal power supply, unlike the regular Nintendo. Alright, so the story so far. This guy named Jeremy sends me an email. He's like, hey, I bought a Nintendo M82, but it was a PAL version. And he tried to switch to NTSC. But apparently he swapped some chips around by accident. And now he said it's not working. I think that's all the screws. So I would assume this slides back. Oh, that's interesting. You have to slide it all the way back. Oh, wow. I think I've seen these in stores, you know, like back in the day, but I've never seen inside of one. Whoa, look at that power supply. I wonder how it works. Probably a whole bunch of buffers, kind of like the Neo Geo. It looks like there's an EEPROM in this. Yeah, probably has some firmware that, you know, has a selection screen or something. What is this like, does this light up or something? Yeah, I don't know. Because controller ports are there. Why are there, oh, there's 5 controller ports. That's interesting. This must light up or something. Maybe it lights up what game you're playing? That must be why this piece is only held on by 4 screws, so it's easy to change the cartridges. That makes sense. Doesn't look like there's any buffer chips on this side. Yeah, it's basically big parallel buses. So they must just disable the minimum things they need to on each cartridge to keep it from running. It's only one cartridge runs at a time. That could be why there's this big Beefosaurus Rex power supply, because all the cartridges would technically be on at the same time, just only one would be active. He said this was the PAL unit, which makes me wonder if it has a different crystal oscillator versus the NTSC version. Because I know on the Nintendo, like most systems, the crystal goes into the video chip, and that kind of runs the show, and then the video chip divides that clock down and actually drives the CPU with it. Look at this selector switch. Ooh, get some frayed wires there. I'm afraid the wires are frayed. Oh, that's not even, that's like 2/3 of a pun. PU. -12, +12, +5. Wonder what they're using the 12 for. Looks like this is fairly self-contained. Power supply module. So here's a trick I like to do. Well, it's not really a trick, but when you're taking something apart like this, when you can, just put the screws back into the threads they came from. That way it's easy to keep track of them later on. It looks like the video signal is being fed to the RF modulator here through this bundle of wires, and it goes out the back here. This is probably so they could make a PAL or NTSC version separately without having to respin the entire board. I'll probably remove that too. We can probably just get the direct signal right from there to make sure it's working. And then here we have an EEPROM labeled CHR, and then it's 64 kilobits, which is 8 kilobytes. So that's going to be your character ROM for the menu graphics. Then, as I mentioned, there's another EEPROM over here. That's no doubt program, which code actually executes from. So the Nintendo, if you didn't know, one of the reasons the cartridge slot is so wide is because it actually has 2 data buses going to the cartridge. One for graphics and one for program. So one of these is going to be the PPU, picture processing unit. The other one's going to be the CPU. And then this is probably some sort of custom ASIC. So if you look here, they've actually put PEM studs into the metal sheeting. That's basically a stud that you put in place like a rivet that has threads for the screw. So that's actually a pretty high quality construction method. And this is a bit annoying. I have to remove the controller port header before I can slide out the cartridge, and then I don't think this ribbon cable, same thing, it won't pull through with the cartridge in place. or the cartridge holder. Oh man, this thing is built like a puzzle box. You can't just remove this top frame. There's a slide here, so you have to pull everything out. So instead of being able to just pull this forward away from the circuit board, from the card edge connectors in there, I've actually got to, I think I have to pull everything out, which means I have to pull that out. So Jeremy said he swapped the chips, but oh man, some of these screws are really tight, so I don't think he got this far before. Using my little stumpy guy here, even though the ball bearing's missing. It's a wider shaft, so I should have more torque. Switch it. Come on. Oh, oh man, that does not want to move. There is one surefire way to get that out, but people will scream if I do it. You take a Dremel and you cut a slot into it. Oh man, people will be throwing things at the screen if I do that. Okay, oil, penetrate. WD-40. 80% of the time, it works 100% of the time. This video is not sponsored by WD-40. I tried to get you to help me willingly, but you have elected the path of pain. Okay, YouTube, get ready to scream. Oh no! He's ruining it! Oh no! It belongs in a museum. Blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you a little something about myself. Now that I no longer am doing that show, I don't care. I just don't care. There we go. Woo! Interestingly, these are all Imperial screws. This looks like a 632, if I had to guess. All the European viewers are thinking, oh, Nintendo's betrayed us. Well, expansion slot, I hope it was worth it. I hope you're proud of what you did here. Isn't that the same as the expansion slot on the bottom of a Nintendo? Strangely, these screws in the back of the unit are square head screws. Kind of strange. Oh man. I fix it doesn't give me very much leverage. Let's try an assist. There we go. Bye-bye, RF unit. Thanks for playing. Oh, maybe this can help. I'm sure a Nintendo representative will be right on the line.
Hi, thank you for calling Nintendo. We're experiencing a high volume of calls, and there are a lot of people waiting to talk to a support.
The number's still good!
Visit our website, support.nintendo.com, for faster service. It has answers to...
Yes, I've blown up an extremely rare and valuable Nintendo M82 demo unit. I was wondering if you could send me 300 free Switches in exchange for it. All right, this should all come straight up and out. Did I miss something? Nope. Come on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Careful. Oh, I gotta, oh man. This is kind of kludgy because you see, you have to lift it up to get past these sliders here. But then at the same token, you're hitting stuff in the back. Ah, come on, almost there. You can do it. There we go. I see a lot of 245s on it. That's an 8-bit two-way transceiver chip. I know that because I just used that on my Z80 Note project. There's quite a few of those. It looks like it might be doing it in banks of 3, like 1, 2, 3. That's not a standard Nintendo pin out there. So it's something custom because you can see there's large ground planes in the middle. Yeah, and then some unpopulated, don't know what those are off the top of my head. And then, yeah, that's probably the RAM because it's got a 16 at the end. So 16 divided by 8 is 2. So that's your 2K of work RAM that the Nintendo has. Oh, and then there's your, I'm going to guess that's your 2K of video RAM that's built into the Nintendo. These all look pretty good. I can probably go in and reflow it anyway, just to make sure there's no cold solder joints. It does have a lot more logic chips than a standard Nintendo motherboard. That was oddly satisfying. Man, that's a big motherboard. No bodges on the back, but there are a few forgotten capacitors here. Well, looks like they didn't forget them, but they needed to add additional ones. Well, this chip has the word video right next to it. RP2C02G. Then we compare that over here. RP2C02H. All right, so that makes sense. Yeah, and then there's the VRAM, work RAM. Okay, so 2A03H is the CPU. Okay, so that's the CPU, and that's the PPU. I should probably dump the ROMs while I'm in here. It's weird, the only thing that seems to connect is positive 5 volts and ground. And then I looked on the power supply, and that connector does go to a red wire, so probably 5 volts. I mean, we can test by going here, 5 volts, and then, okay, is it after the fuse? Yeah, let's try to figure this out. So 5 volts, 5, 5, 5, 5. This should also be 5. What? Oh, no, you didn't. No. No. Oh my gosh. The whole bottom flood fill is 5 volts? No. 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 Oh. Seriously? I think I'm going to have a heart attack and die from this surprise. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, so whatever that is there. And then you've got these which are going into the flood fill, but that's actually 5 volts. It's normally ground. And then those 3 must be flood filled to ground on the front. So let's see. I mean, this would normally be ground. So there, there, there. Yep. Okay. That's, I don't think I've ever run into that before. Yeah, look at this. They've got isolation. So this is ground, and they've got a connector to the screw, but then they have a keep away for the 5 volts, which is right there. But then if you look, that's like a really thin sliver, you know, for all of that. And, okay. But yeah, look at, oh, this is bizarre. Why did they do that? Of course, you know, again, back in these days, this was just a 2-layer board. That is weird. Well, the more you know. I see some hand soldering flux residue there. That is, oh, the crystal. So yeah, they probably swapped out the crystal if they wanted to make it NTSC instead of PAL, because I guarantee it's a different crystal for PAL. So there were 3 grounds, 3 positive 5 volts, and then a separate connection here. 3 connectors, 2 wires each. So it looks like the wire on the right-hand side, which would be these 3, these are the positive voltages, and then the purple wires, see how they all go to the end there, 1, 2, 3, the grounds. Well, that's not what I expected. It's ground, 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 5, 5, 5, and this separate trace is also 5. Very well then, my plan is to use an IDC connector, which IDC stands for Installation Displacement Connector, or as I like to call it, It Didn't Connect connector. Anyway, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to put on 3 5-volt leads and then 3 grounds, and just hook it up to my bench power supply, so it's a lot easier to power this up for testing. All right, I've got it hooked up to my one of my bench power supplies. That one's just a small PC power supply in a cool case. Anyway, just flip the switch and it'll turn on. Should be more than adequate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove pretty much all of the socketed chips and just start with the PPU. I've soldered some test wires into the grounds of the unpopulated chips. I don't want to clip on the side of this board because of the way that 5-volt power plane is set up. So I'm just going to look for signs of life around the PPU first, which is this guy over here. All right, powering up. Well, nothing exploded. Let's see if we got a 5-volt rail. I'm looking at my scope. Okay, 5 volts is present. All right, so clock into the PPU is 18. Let's see if we got anything there. And yes, we have a clock on the scope. 21 megahertz, that sounds right. Obviously the Nintendo doesn't run at 21 megahertz, but the video chip runs faster than the CPU. Pin 29 is a clock input to the CPU. All right, so 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Okay, we've got that, also 21 megahertz. Oh, you can do this too. I mean, this might seem kind of silly, but you know, sometimes if a chip is damaged, it will be very warm, and it's a good way to identify a bad chip. Oh, I was incorrect in my previous assessment. The output pin on this is actually chip select, so that's actually what's, you know, selecting this as part of the, you know, address bus. You know, this is a 6502 based system, so it all the peripherals are memory mapped, which means if you have a video register, you have to map that as part of your RAM address. It's not like the Z80 where you have a separate ports, basically. So, yeah. So it looks like it's sending the same 21.4 whatever megahertz to these, and instead of the video chip controlling the CPU, it looks like they're working in tandem. It's important to note that even though this is based off the 6502, it is definitely not a 6502. Well, I mean, it's not pin compatible with the 6502. On the Nintendo, the sound generation is done in the main CPU, and it also has shift register capabilities, which is how it reads the controllers. I'm not seeing any activity. Okay, let's see. A0 is 4. Let's see if we got anything. Still nothing. Okay, if there's a program running, you definitely have activity on the low address lines. Perhaps this is being held in reset. Let's see. Reset is pin 3. Okay, pin 3 is high, so this is not being held in reset either. So what is preventing this CPU from operating? I put the control ASIC back in. Now I'm seeing activity on the address lines. Guess the next question is there an NTSC signal coming off of pin 21 to the PPU? Let's see what we can get. Switching on. All right, let's just stop it. Yeah, it's definitely NTSC. Oh, there's something. Okay, there's some signals. I should look at a YouTube video to see what the title screen of this actually looks like. But what I can do is I can go to trigger menu, trigger type. I can actually set it to be video. NTSC, blah, blah, blah. Yes, okay, let's see if it actually works. Yep, there we go. We locked onto it. See an NTSC video. So this is the horizontal sync pulse, basically 0 volts. And that squiggly line right there, that's the color burst frequency. Basically that synchronizes each line to the phase of the color information that's hidden within the black and white signal. So you see that happens at the start of every line. And if we go out far enough here, see how there's 3 inverted lines? That's the vertical blank. So that's what's actually telling the TV to start drawing the signal again from the top. It appears the other CPU is working as well, so might be an issue with the PPU, but something tells me it's something beyond the 2 main chips. And I'm pretty sure the ASIC is still working because, as I mentioned, when the guy put the system together incorrectly, the ASIC was out of the system, so it should have been spared damage. This is the address 0 line. There's usually always something going on in address 0. I suppose I should just hook this up to a screen and see if anything's coming out of it. I'll test it with this. Now, this should have almost been in the oldest things I use every day video, but I don't use it every day. But this is a 20-year-old digital 8 video camera, and it still works. This battery is actually 20 years old as well, and it still holds a charge. It's amazing. But this is a really handy camera, actually. I know it seems like it's obsolete, and it has been through a lot. This thing has been taped under vehicles and taped onto jet skis and dropped off cliffs and you name it. But it's really handy because if you put in an 8mm or high 8mm videotape, you can actually convert the analog tapes over FireWire into a digital file on your computer. So it's actually pretty handy for that. And I actually looked it up. These are actually still worth money because of that feature. But the main thing I want it for is video input. It cannot be stopped. Because you know why? Made in Japan. All the best stuff is made in Japan. Bobby Dazzler. All right, so I just soldered a header on here. This is what went to the RF modulator, but so yeah, if you put this thing into VCR mode, yeah, see the nice little light up buttons? Put it into VCR mode and you pipe video into it, it should show up on the screen because you can record the video. Maybe not. That's odd. Said you wanted to be here when I made a mistake. This could be it. Something about this camera was attenuating the signal. I can see it on the scope. Oh, that's right. The Nintendo needs video amplification, so there's probably something in the RF module that's boosting the signal even further. That's why we can't see it here. Oh man, it's all coming back to me now, like that Meatloaf song, or Celine Dion, or whoever sang it first. You know, end of the day, let's face it, it's a Jim Steinman song. Yeah, I could like procedurally generate a Jim Steinman song. It would be like, you're running really fast and you don't want to lose, and your girlfriend just left you for another guy. You look up at the sky and you look at the heavens and you don't want to know why. All right, let's try this again going through the RF modulator, which I believe has the amplification circuit that the Nintendo needs. And still nothing. Well, I got the signal there. Is there no signal here? That's a hootenanny. Is it something with the RF box? This looks like a standard Nintendo RF module just bolted to a piece of aluminum. The only difference is they've just got a grounding tab where the 7805 voltage regulator normally goes. I wonder if I have any spare Nintendos laying around and I could just grab the box off of that, bolt it to this, and that might fix all the issues. Well, I looked around for like 3 minutes and I couldn't find any other Nintendo, so I'm just going to have to take apart my Nintendo, which has like a stereo audio mod. Although I never use this because I have one of those retro AVS FPGA Nintendos. This is using up a lot of my solder wick, which is kind of like the toilet paper of electronics. Oh, dead or alive, you're coming with me. Yeah, barf biscuit. The headers from my RF modulator are way too thick to work with a Molex KK156 connector like this. So I was thinking I could just put a new header in. Okay, well, assuming this was the problem, I'm going to basically swap the cables around and, hook it up. And put in the last piece. Yeah, nice and solid. Nice. Okay, swap complete. Let's see if anything happens. Hey! Well, that's pretty fancy. Wow, they did that with just a 8K character ROM. All right, so the problem was the RF modulator. Maybe by some weird happenstance, swapping the chips caused something to happen to the modulator. I don't know. Yeah, it's scanning for games. I have all 12 loaded, but I get a brief flash of Mario 2, and that's it. Only one game works, Turbo Racing. And if we look at it, NES 44 UKV, which means it's PAL. Okay, so this thing is only wanting to play PAL games. I guess something was missed in the conversion. I looked it up online. It turns out there is a different lockout chip for PAL regions, and this is that chip. So I just did the lockout chip disable, which is to tie pin 4 to ground and cut it off from the rest of the connections. And it should now work. All right, let's get this on. Time Lord. Shatterhand. I went and grabbed a bunch of MMC3 games just to make sure they worked. That's the kind of the more advanced mapper. Yeah, shouldn't this be scrolling? Yeah, there's definitely something going on with the scan line counter scrolling. See, what the MMC3 chip does is it keeps track of what scan line is being drawn separately in the cartridge, and then it can allow interrupts to allow, you know, multiple planes of scrolling. But those games don't seem to be working correctly. Okay, here comes the helicopter. Oh, yep, look at that. Playfield got all messed up. I've been following the interrupt trace from the CPU. It goes to the expansion slot, and then it goes over to this resistor array, which pulls it up to 5 volts. It actually connects to that pin right there on the other side. But if we flip it around, see, it goes in right there, that trace, to the top resistor on the resistor array. Resistor array is basically, you know, 10 resistors or 8 resistors that have a common connection to 5 volts. So you can use it to pull up a bunch of signals at once. And since interrupt is active low, you want to keep it high if you don't want the CPU to be interrupted. But I'll be doggone if I can find it escaping here. So maybe the interrupt signal isn't even getting to the cartridge, which would be why the scanline counters on MMC3 games don't work. WTF? I don't think IRQ is connected to any of the cartridges. What the heck? So would this thing have been useless by like late 1989? Okay, so just on cart 2, I've connected the IRQ line directly to the CPU, and that shouldn't negatively affect the built-in ROM. And I guess we'll see if the scrolling works in Ninja Gaiden. Oh, look at that. I wonder if this has to be a known issue. I guess I could set up a multiplexer for the IRQ inputs. Maybe it doesn't even have to be that complicated. So apparently this was a known issue, and then the fix is what I did, which is to manually attach a IRQ wire from the cartridge to the CPU. But then you can only have one MMC or IRQ related game. I think that's lame. There's got to be a way to do it right. This is my plan for dealing with the interrupts. So I have some quad input AND gates. Basically it's 4 in, 1 out, and there's 2 of those gates per integrated circuit. So I propose this. Hook up the interrupts of each cartridge into AND gates like this, and then we combine the output of those AND gates into another AND gate, 1, 2, 3, and just tie the 4th one high. And then the output of that will go to the CPU's IRQ line. So basically, most of the time they'll all be high, which means a 1 will come out here in active IRQ. That's why there's a line over it. That means it's active low. But if any of these go low, if any cartridge triggers an interrupt, a 0 will cascade to the CPU. And since only one cartridge is active at a time, only one interrupt should happen at a time. And I did look inside one of the cartridges that doesn't use the interrupt line. The interrupt line is not connected to anything, which means the resistor will pull it high. So this should work. And here's the plan in action. I have a 10K pull-up resistor between IRQ and 5 volts on each one of the cartridge slots. Then that goes to a pair of quad input NAND gates. And the output, as shown in the drawing, goes to the IRQ on the CPU. Now it turned out cartridge number 12 did have a connection to the interrupt on the CPU, and that was actually screwing me up, which is kind of weird. So I guess you could put one MMC3 game in this thing. But what I did was I actually cut that trace to disable it so it would work and play nice with the rest of the cartridges. Okay, I have it mostly back together. I double checked the power supply. I mean, it probably could use a new power supply, but if this one works, I'm just going to leave it in here for now. And it is a 110 220. I was worried about it being just a 220 since it's from a PAL country. But of course it's got the American plug on it, although maybe this was modded after the fact. This is kind of fun. You can load up like all the sequels to a game. I've got like the 2 Batman games, the first 2 Contras, Ninja Gaiden, and then of course Mega Man and Mega Man 2. Now that it's working, let's play some games!
But first, a word from our sponsor, surfbadger.com VPN. Surfbadger.com VPN is the best VPN I've ever used. What is a VPN? Well, it stands for Virtual Private Network. And what it does is it allows you to, I guess, change your IP address. So let's say you're browsing honey.com, the greatest website ever. It's like coupon clipping for millennials. See, you do have something in common with the boomers after all. Anyway, let's say that you don't want honey.com to know what country you're in because maybe there's a better deal on socks if you live in Egypt. So anyway, you just you tell badgervpn.com, hey, I'm in Egypt, and then all of a sudden Honey is going to give you the best deals on socks. Hey, do you live in America and you're tired of the crappy selection of 20-year-old movies that are on Netflix? Well, just tell Surf Badger that you live in, I don't know, Australia or something, and boom, an entirely different selection of 20-year-old movies to watch. It couldn't be easier. So sign up today for surfbadger.com VPN because you totally need to hide your IP address at all times for some reason in order to make location services and maps completely useless. I know when I'm traveling in other countries, the last thing I want my phone to do is tell me exactly where I am in a foreign place. Go to surfbadger.com/Ben Heck and enter promo code Ben, that's BEN, and you can save, I don't know, maybe like 20% off on Surf Badger. Surf Badger, taking a bite out of internet privacy, one IP address at a time.
Think you're supposed to start with Bomb Man? So this 4K TV actually still has analog inputs, but a negative of that is that it's too old to work with Disney Plus. But a positive of that is that there's nothing on Disney Plus to watch. Mega Man 2! Yes! Like most people, this was the one I actually played first. I guess I just have to get a good thumb workout to push A. You know, just like movies, video games don't have the soundtracks they once did. The perennial classic, Super Mario Bros. 3. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, something you might be able to see. You look down in that corner, see that glitch? That's the IRQ scan line glitch. And there's a little bit of inaccuracy to it. That's why the line isn't perfectly updated on time. Now, some games hide that really well by just having all black around it, but often on MMC3 games, you'll see that glitch either on that side or on that side of the screen. That's why I wasn't worried about the propagation delay with those AND gates, because I already knew it was imperfect. 30 years later, we still remember where everything is. Of course. Castlevania, based off the hit Netflix series. Easily the best video game adaptation ever made. It's amazing, all you have to do is follow the story of the games, and it turns out well, huh? You know, if you go on benheck.com and dig up a really, really old article I wrote like 15 years ago, I said that if you just adapted Symphony of the Night, you would have a pretty good Castlevania movie, and that's pretty much what they did in the series. It's basically Castlevania 3 meets Symphony of the Night, and it's awesome. You know, I didn't really care for this game even back in the day, so I guess I disliked it before it was cool. Oh man, I've gone to a church. Can't do that nowadays. Uh-oh, I'm not doing very good social distancing with that priest. Okay, here's Castlevania 3. Kind of curious to see if this one will still work, because this is my only MMC5 game. Yeah, it's still got some funkiness going on. Well, how many MMC5 games are there really? Like this, Star Tropics 1 and 2, and then a bunch of those Koei games like Noah Bunga's Revenge, Cowabunga's Revenge. I don't know, Trevor Belmont looks a little weird. It's like Cubist Belmont. Okay, here's Batman, based off the 1989 movie, and the game has nothing to do with the movie, but it's still awesome. Sunsoft usually had their own mapper, so I'm curious to see if this one's going to work properly. Yeah, because the first time we tried this, Batman's sprite was garbled. I am so obviously totally playing the game in these reaction shots. Oh, darn it. Am I not allowed to push start? 'Cause normally in this you push start and that's what switches your weapons. Oh no, it's an all-fist speedrun, which I'm sure exists. Batman, Return of the Joker. This game is an IRQ tour de force. Again, it has a custom Sunsoft mapper. So those clouds at the top, that's going to be done by character redefinition, not scanline manipulation. But later on in the stage, we should have some multi-plane scrolling. Nice! See, since the graphics are stored on a separate area of memory, the mappers can basically rapidly switch blocks of data to create the illusion of movement, such as with those clouds. Because the console itself would not even be remotely fast enough to move data that quickly. I mean, the Nintendo can barely draw cells past the scan line, or the scroll line, I should say. In the latest reboot of the new 52, Batman has lasers coming out of his wrists. It's what the kids wanted. Millennials are really into lasers. Okay, so we have at least one IRQ being fired off, probably two. Probably like one for the background cloud layer, and then obviously another one for the foreground building layer. So yeah, I think we're good. Oh boy, Contra, a classic. Super C. What's C stand for? Definitely not Contra. You know what it probably was? They're probably like, oh, what's in the news over there in America? Something about Iran and Contra. Oh, okay, we'll call the game Contra. Because, like, in Europe, it was Probotector, I want to say. Because, well, not all of Europe, but at that time, Germany had some pretty strict rules about depicting violence in humans. Which actually only just very recently was lifted. Ninja Gaiden. Remember my uncle on my dad's side actually bought this for me in 1989. I was like, wow, uncles are cool! Oh. I guess I gave my niece a laptop. But it was an old laptop, but she didn't care as long as it could play Minecraft and Roblox. This game is filling my heart with rage. Well, filling it with more rage. Oh, darn it. Here, let's see if I can do this. Oh yeah, so you can kind of do this wall trick where you can climb the wall without jumping to something else. And in the sequels, they made it so you can just shimmy up the wall, because they probably realized how annoying that was. And finally, Ninja Gaiden 2. Presentation on these games is so cool. Well, of course, so was Tecmo Bowl and Super Tecmo Bowl. Tecmo was definitely well ahead of the curve when it came to presentation of games. Oh no. What happened to her? Oh yeah, listen to those pre-recorded synth drums. See here, you go. That looks like a sloth. Ninja sloth. You killed my father. Prepare to die. I hope you enjoyed this teardown, repair, and improvement video for the Nintendo M82 store demo kiosk unit. If you have any rare consoles yourself that you'd like me to take apart and fix, hit me up on Twitter @BenHeck, or go to benheck.com and use the email link there to send me a message directly. We'll see you in the next video.